Welcome back. You're listening to Across the Border. This is our Prophecy Reality Edition. And in our last segment, we began talking about the beast powers of apocalyptic scripture. And that would be Daniel and the Revelation. There are 7 enumerated in all. 4 are explicitly named in the scripture, and that would be explicitly in Daniel chapters 7 and 8, I believe. 5 had fallen at the time of the writing of the Revelation, and the 6th one was contemporary with John, and called the One Is, and one had not yet come. And so we want to discover what exactly a beast power is, what does it take to qualify as a beast power, what can be a beast power and what cannot be a beast power. So once we figure out who all these beasts are, then we can figure out who qualifies to be this 7th one, the last and final one that is unnamed, but spoken of only in chapter 13 of the Revelation. Okay, let me jump back into my document here. And I am publishing a quincentennial edition of the Horae Apocalyptic for the 500th anniversary of the Reformation itself, because the historicist method of interpretation is the child of the Reformation, speaking eschatologically. Okay, it is the child of the Reformation, and it was birthed out of 2 ideas. The first one was the discovery that the papacy was the seat of the Antichrist. And the second one, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, was the great apostasy spoken of in Scripture. And since they found both of these things in Scripture, that requires looking in history for the fulfillment. And that is the very core of what the historicist method is prophecy unfolding in history, simply because prophecy is history told in advance, revealed in advance by the Almighty for us. Okay, and we were talking about, in our last segment, we had jumped into the attributes of the earth beast prefigured in the visions. And there are 2 visions in chapter 17, verses 10 and 11. The 7th beast, which has to be the earth beast, because it is the only additional beast mentioned in the scripture. Okay? Beyond the 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the 1 is not yet come. It says that he must continue a short space when he cometh. And so we get those 2 attributes of this final beast, 7th beast, in Revelation chapter 17. All of the rest of our attributes come from chapter 13. The beast comes up out of the earth. So we notice that he does not rise up out of the sea, as did the 4 previous beast powers. The sea, waters, or flood, each respectively indicating multitudes or a densely populated area such as the old world, and conquest by warfare or the sword. This earth beast would rise up without conquest of the beast preceding it, nor would it occupy the highly populated locality of the preceding sea beast powers. So there's no assimilation of territory and peoples going on with the rise of this chapter 13 two-horned earth beast. 4, he had 2 horns like a lamb. So let's talk about what do horns mean on a beast. For reference, we avert our attention to the division of the Greek Empire, with its singular horn being broke off when Alexander the Great conquered the world, okay? Conquered the Medo-Persian Empire, and finally he died at a very young age. And 4 of his generals parted the kingdom. So the scripture tells us, it signifies this by the symbol of the singular horn of that beast being broken off and 4 coming up in its place, signifying a new 4-fold division. Let me put my document on the screen here for you. Signifying a new 4-fold division. And then we have the 10 horns of the concurrent sea beast. 3 being plucked up before the little horn. So we have this additional little horn. Or I don't know if it's additional. Well, yeah, it was additional to the 10. Okay, when the 10 horns appeared. 3 of them were plucked up before the little horn and supplanted by it. So what does that tell us? So we're looking at the scripture to see what is the meaning of the 2 horns on this earth beast. Okay? We expect to see something representing a 2-fold division of power during the continuance of this earth beast. Because nowhere do we notice in the life of this earth beast any mention of one horn falling off or one being supplanted by the other. And these horns, they appear together, and so they must be surviving during the continuance of this beast. Both of these horns of power on this beast. It rises up with the 2 horns, and that situation never changes. Now that may be a good thing, but you'll see what I mean when we get to the end of this. Okay, why that may be a good thing. When we understand what the 2 beast powers are, the 2 horns represent. So we expect to see something representing a 2-fold division of power during the continuance of this earth beast. It's being described as like a lamb may be an indicator of one of those horns or division of power, and the other indicated by our next attribute. He spake as a dragon. This dragon influence or division would be concurrent throughout the life of this beast's power with the 2 horns. As we notice, no change or one horn being plucked up by another as in the Grecian or Roman Empire beasts previous to it. This beast may be somewhat schizophrenic, with a constant power struggle between its lamb-like qualities and dragon-like conversation, especially in its support of the sea beast, which derives its power from the dragon or Satan, the god of this world. So we begin to understand. Number 6, he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. In its history, the Roman Empire ruled the then known world and all of its civilizations. It had military outposts in many of those nations. It was the police power of the world. This is the kind of power that will be necessary to fulfill the following tasks, and that is our attributes 7 through 14, set forth in the vision for this earth beast power. So remember when you heard of the Roman centurions and in Palestine during Jesus' time, they were the police. That's right. Think of them as the police, as your neighborhood police. Of course, they were there by an occupying force or occupying nation, the Roman Empire, which governed and was that power beast, power of mortal man over the whole earth at the time. The one is contemporary with John when he received the revelation. Well, they were the police power of the world. Okay. 7, causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast. This is an overview of the end result and motivation of this horn division in the following actions, or in the biblical sense, it's dragon conversation. If the dragon speaking part of this beast is going to do anything, okay, it's going to come alongside of the other beast's power And it's going to cause people to worship the first beast, because the first beast gets its power from the dragon. He uses the following feats to accomplish world obedience to the first beast. He doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. In context, this is military power. An overwhelming military power. And contemporarily, this means firepower. 9. He deceiveth them that dwell in the earth by the means of those miracles he had power to do in the sight of the beast, the sea beast. Here we continue the theme of an overwhelming military power that would seem miraculous by any historical standard, saying to them that dwell in the earth that they should make an image to the beast. So much so this power that the world will easily capitulate to the assembly of the image of the beast and eventual world obedience to it. 11. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast. And here again, I believe we're continuing the theme of military power. Okay? The end result of the wonder, power, and miraculous machinations of this earth beast lead to the next step of worship or obedience to the image of the beast that was and is not and yet is, which will vicariously rule the world through the construct of this image. 12. And causes many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, indicating that this second beast's dragon actions must be the primary enforcement arm of the image it creates. 13. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. And that's going to be my section 4, which I'm working on right now, talking about the mark of the beast. So let's jump into it here. Our section 2. Identity of the earth beast prefigured in the vision. And when I get done with this, anyone who listens to this should have no doubts that these are true words and that we have identified this earth beast. Now we look to recent history, and it seems so obvious, so wonderfully fulfilled, that only one candidate among the prominent powers of the world stands out immediately as fulfilling every criteria of this two-horned earth beast in every detail prefigured in the apocalyptic vision. Here we expound on them one point at a time. America. Number 1. America had not yet come at the reception of the revelation by John. The new world where this power appeared was an unknown. Upon the punishment and wounding, as it were to death, of that head of the sea beast, a dominion that lasted for 1,260 years under that head, and about 1,200 years before that, from its pagan beginnings about the 8th century BC, the papal power in its Holy Roman Empire seemed to disappear. Was and is not, yet is. By 1870, it seemed only a powerless shadow of it remained. 2. America rises in the New World about the same time of the wounding of the Roman papal head, and has now existed a little more than 200 years in its current constitutional form. How much time can this beast power continue before it exceeds the short space qualification? Remember, the sea beasts already existed more than 2,400 years. America has only existed for a little more than 200 years. How much time can this earth beast power continue before it exceeds the short space qualification? Exactly what is a short space in context of the prophecy? Even if Christ were not to appear for several hundred years more, America's time would be a short space by comparison. Number 3, America comes up out of the earth rather than the sea, representing peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, where the 4 previous beast powers rose up. This beast power rises up out of the New World, sparsely populated by comparison. There is no conquest or necessity of assimilation as noticed in the previous consecutive sea beast powers, so that this power can come alongside of and support the sea beast as predicted. 4, he had 2 horns like a lamb, and 5, he spake as a dragon. When a 10th part of the papal kingdom fell, which 10th E.B. Elliott identifies as the falling away of Protestant England from the papal states, many had been fleeing to the New World to escape religious persecution and papal inquisition in the same place where Protestant England eventually established 13 colonies. Canada to the north was a crown colony of the sovereign city of London, still is. Mexico down through all of South America, Latin America, was conquered on behalf of the Vatican by the papal vassals of Portugal and Spanish conquistadors. In the New World, the only power that rose up and came to exhibit all of the attributes of the Revelation 13 earth beast is the one that developed out of the 13 colonies planted by Protestant England, the United States of America. These horns appear to be lifelong polar opposites as indicated. They coexist without change during the continuance of the earth beast. These 2 horns demonstrate 2 equal and opposing powers at the origin of this beast, lamb-like and draconic in speech. The American Continental Congress adopted the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, on November 15, 1777. The present Constitution for the United States was written during the Constitutional Convention. Those that opposed it were able to get the Bill of Rights attached to it to preserve those liberties. And I'm going to call them what they are. They are Reformed Protestant liberties that sprung out of the Reformation. The Bill of Rights was attached to it to preserve those liberties. Without the Bill of Rights, the Constitution would have been a complete con, and we would have lost all of our rights. I thank God for those godly men who insisted upon the Bill of Rights. Those liberties we still enjoy today. So this Constitution was signed on September 17, 1787. F. Tupper Saucy, in his book, Rulers of Evil, unquestionably exposes the hidden, secret influence in the establishment of the U.S. Constitution, and more specifically, the concentration of power in the newly created head of this beast. And I believe that's the draconic speaking part of the United States of America, is the sovereign city of the District of Columbia. Though this power, and I'm speaking of the United States, was founded on many godly or lamb-like principles, the draconic influence would eventually turn it to come alongside the draconic power of the sea beast that infected it at its inception. The history of this alliance between these 2 beasts is foretold in the 13th chapter of the Revelation. We move on to number 6 of our attributes. He, that is the two-horned earth beast, exercises all the power of the first beast before him. It would take 2 world wars centered around the dominant locality of the wounded head to lure this earth beast into its predicted apocalyptic position of help and support for the sea beast. It is not insignificant that about the same time that the first beast receives its deadly head wound, that the second beast rises in the new world and in time comes to exercise all of the powers of the first beast before it, until it finally causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. It is all too evident that America is changing, just as the scripture indicates that it would, as this second or earth beast. As the Roman Empire was once the visible police power of the world, so today America, since World War II, has emerged as the police power of the world and exercises all the power of the first beast before him. Despite recently closing hundreds of bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States still maintains nearly 800 military bases in more than 70 countries and territories abroad. From giant little Americas to small radar facilities. Britain, France, and Russia, by contrast, have about 30 foreign bases combined. Who can argue with it? Does America exercise all the power of the Roman Empire before it? Absolutely, as the police power of the world. And when we speak of power here, we're speaking of police power, we're speaking of military might. The remainder of this earth beast attributes or actions are the topic of our next 2 sections following. Okay, you're listening to Across the Border. It's our Prophecy Reality Edition. And the topic of this segment is the beast powers of apocalyptic scripture, Daniel and the Revelation, how 7 are enumerated, 4 named, 5 had fallen at the time of the Revelation being given to St. John at Patmos, and the one that is the Roman Empire, identified as contemporary with John, and the one had not yet come. And we'll talk about how the earth beast creates an image, the earth beast from Revelation chapter 13, in our next segment. The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our Listen and Schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.